At the heart of National Socialism, there is a paradox between an ideology that, on the one hand, wants to be highly scientific and sees itself as a form of science almost, and on the other hand, an ideology that is obsessed with mysticism and is almost something like a religion, an ideology that is uh, kind of very similar to the early Christian heresy of Gnosticism. And by the way, my main inspiration for this video is Michael Bulray's book about the Third Reich. So let me first emphasize the more quote-unquote scientific, or I should say pseudo-scientific elements of Nazism before I explain to you why Nazism could also be considered a religion. And I also want to explain to you the fractions in the Nazi party that clashed over this great paradox, over this contradiction. So on the one hand, we have Hitler who is obsessed with seeing Nazism as a highly scientific doctrine. And religious people also like to bring up the fact that Hitler was obsessed with Darwin's theory of evolution. And it is true, Hitler did see himself as a invisible hand of natural selection killing the inferior species. He wanted to kind of take the laws of natural selection and apply them to geopolitics of the 20th century. In Mein Kampf, Hitler even explicitly says, in the same way in which animals show no mercy to each other when they kill each other, that is how war should work. And Hitler makes the case that in the same way in which we use, for example, animals as slaves, we should use inferior species of humans. And why do I say that Nazism could be seen as a religion, or that in some ways it even is a religion? I'm not simply making the case that Nazism is dogmatic, like Stalinist communism was. And I'm also not just making the case that Nazism uses religious language, because Stalin was famous for using religious language, perhaps because in his early days of adolescence he was trying to become a priest. And one of my favorite Stalin quotes is, "Only a road soaked in blood leads to the promised land of socialism." And it is also true that the communists tried to imitate religious rituals. For example, as they burned icons of saints, they told the peasants to now, instead of saints, worship Lenin and Stalin. And Stalinist communism was definitely very crazy in some of its aspects. The infamous monkey, or I should say ape, hybrid army affair really illustrates the absurdity of Stalinism. So in the 1920s, Stalin had this brilliant idea of mixing humans and apes and creating a new form of Soviet super soldier. Tick History actually has an interesting video about that infamous affair, so check it out if you're interested. But no, Nazism is not simply crazy in a way in which Stalinism was. Nazism believes in the mystical dimension, in the immaterial, in the soul, one could say. And this fraction of the Nazi party that was obsessed with mysticism and black magic is represented by primarily two people, Heinrich Himmler and Alfred Rosenberg. Rosenberg being the main ideologist of the Nazi party. And they wanted to turn Nazism into a religion. But on the other hand, we have Hitler, who is insulted by that proposition, and he argues that Nazism is a highly scientific doctrine, a folk philosophy, he says, based entirely on blood, on your race. That is what keeps the folk together, as Hitler used to say. But Hitler also had other more hidden reasons for insisting on the quote-unquote fact that Nazism was scientific. It wasn't just that Hitler was actually rational enough to realize that in order to appeal to a more broader audience of Germans, Nazism should not be a religion, because an average German was a Christian. So Hitler wanted Nazism to seem scientific in order to be more popular. But on the other hand, Hitler was also obsessed with finding the Holy Grail, and he also searched for the spear with which Christ was pierced, and many of the founding members of the Nazi Party in fact belonged to this crazy, secret, esoteric Bavarian society, and I'm talking about the cult of Tula. They were anti-Jewish, anti-Bolshevik, and they searched for this mystical land of Tula that Vergilius wrote is located on the edge of the earth, and allegedly Hyperboreans lived on that mystical continent or an island, and there is a famous fantasy novel that takes place in the Hyperborean age, and that is Conan the Barbarian. So Robert E. Howard and founding fathers of the Nazi Party were actually inspired by the same, I believe, Greek myths. Actually, in Greek mythology, we find the Hyperboreans, and Herodot actually mentions them. But okay, I digress. So Hitler also did not want National Socialism to become a religion, because if it had become a religion, then he could no longer have absolute power, and some form of dogma would exist in Nazi scripture that even he would be unable to change, and he did not like that. That is why he also insisted on Nazism not being a religion. But on the other hand, Hitler did say some things that cannot be purely explained by reason. For example, in one of his most famous speeches, Hitler said, while staring at the crowd, "I'm in you and you're in me." Now, perhaps he was just being a populist, but I don't think so, and most historians agree with me. If he just wanted to say that he represents the interests of the German people, he could have done it in a much more clear way. What Hitler was saying remains somewhat a mystery, but he was probably saying that in a spiritual realm, somehow he is one with the German people. And Nazis, or at least Himmler and his fraction of the Nazi Party, they did believe in the soul. And Himmler was also trying to create this bizarre version of Aryan Christianity. Himmler did not like ordinary Christianity. He saw it as weak and as pro-Jewish, because Christ was at least half Jewish, and here you can see how Hitler imagined the baby Christ with blue hair. But Himmler wanted Christianity to return to paganism, and he also believed that Christianity needs to be cleansed from its Jewish elements, and Jewish elements for Himmler were mercy, mercy towards the enemy, and empathy, and all the most beautiful things about Christianity. For Himmler, those elements were Jewish. So he wanted Christianity to become more like the pagan beliefs of the Greco-Roman time period. And in the end, it is not clear whether or not Nazism is more of a religion or more of a pseudoscience, but I do believe that Nazism is actually both. Okay, if you like this video, don't forget to drop like, share and subscribe.